Hey everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes from RM18CPR, who says, Hey Steve, I look forward every Friday to You Had to Ask, so I'm excited to pick your brain. For your next An Atheist Reads series, I was wondering if you could pick a book from Christian apologist Dinesh D'Souza. Many atheists have referred to him as king of the straw man in his debates. In my personal opinion, he's a shocking example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. His debate tactics are like listening to an Ivy League educated guy trying to convince his audience about the existence of the Easter Bunny. Have you seen his debates before? And if you have, what do you think about his aggressive debating style? How would you debate a guy like him? How would you take him down? What do you think are his weakest arguments? Would you consider doing an Atheist Read series on him? Thanks. I would absolutely consider doing an Atheist Read series on a book of Dinesh D'Souza's. It won't be the next one, as I announced at the end of the most recent and final episode of the An Atheist Reads Simply Christian series that I published just yesterday, if you're watching this as I upload the videos. The next An Atheist Reads series will be about Ray Comfort. But yeah, Dinesh D'Souza would definitely be someone I would look at doing one of those about. I think that I probably feel the same way about D'Souza as you seem to. King of the Straw Man is a good is a good nickname for him. He is, Christopher Hitchens used to say that Dinesh was his favorite debating partner, and I feel like he was saying that maybe because Dinesh made him look the best by comparison. I mean, when you have someone like Hitchens who seemed so effortlessly witty and charming and intelligent, and then you have Dinesh D'Souza, who, like you say, seems to be a sterling example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. I mean, I'm sure maybe in person he's a nice guy. Maybe if you go to a ball game with him, or you hang out with him, or you have a beer or have a nice meal, I'm sure he's a lovely guy. But in those debates, he seems like such an idiot. I almost feel bad for him. The things he says are so mind-bogglingly just simple-minded and stupid. I kind of feel bad for him. He's that stupid. He's so stupid it hurts my feelings to watch him, especially when he debates someone like Christopher Hitchens, who he debated many times. And if you want to have a good laugh, watch one of those D'Souza versus Hitchens debates. They're all over YouTube. There are many examples of them. Yeah, I would totally do a D'Souza book for an Atheist Reads. And how would I debate him if we had a debate? I mean, I would definitely ask him to go first. Tony Reed, hey Steve, a lot of apologists like to ask the gotcha question, as an atheist, what are you going to say if you end up face to face with your creator after you die? I've heard Dawkins turn this question around on the questioner, but never really answer it. My personal response would be something like, thanks. I'm grateful for the life I had. It was the perfect blend of bitter and sweet. I couldn't have done any better myself. Good job, God. I suspect, however, that even my answer is still bypassing what the apologist is asking for, if for no other reason than to entertain the notion. What would your answer be to this oft-repeated creationist conundrum? I would like to think that I would say something similar to your answer there, Tony. I would express gratitude. I would tell God, thank you for my life. Thank you for placing humanity at such a time in stellar evolution that we sort of came of age intellectually and scientifically in time to be able to recognize and understand a bit of how wondrous and amazing and awesome the universe was. To have some shallow bit of comprehension of the vastness of everything. I would thank him for making such an amazing universe and for making us in such a way and at such a time that we could know something of it. And I would also say to him, if my knowing him and discovering him was as important to him as my knowing and discovering and appreciating the universe, then he should have made himself more apparent. I mean, I don't know what else you can say. I get the feeling you say that you mentioned in your question, like, what the creationist or what the Christian is hinting at by asking that question. And I think that's what they're hinting at. Like, what would your excuse be? when you stand before God as someone who didn't believe in him? What would your excuse be? And I mean, my answer would be to ask God what his excuse is. If it's so important to him that I believe in him, why did he give me absolutely no reason to believe in him? And why does he only attach importance to the decision of whether or not to believe in him when that decision is made from a place of ignorance? I mean, he puts us in a world where there's no obvious, compelling, conclusive evidence that he exists. And then when we die, if we haven't accepted his existence on the basis of no evidence whatsoever, then we're punished for that. We're made to suffer for that. And we don't have the option to make the decision to follow him or become one of his children or join Team God, however you want to call it, after we die and the truth has been revealed to us. You can only make the decision from a place of ignorance. And I just can't respect that. I'm just incapable of respecting that sort of a God that would impose that kind of a choice on people. But that aside, I would still be grateful for my life and for the universe. Tyler Bell, what is your opinion on Tim Burton? I think Tim Burton is a very talented director, but I think he's the sort of filmmaker who really needs a really good, strong producer to guide him, to sort of rein him in. I think visually he has great imagination, he has great ideas, he's a wonderfully imaginative, inventive director, very fluid director, great command of the camera, great command of the visual, great use of visual effects, things like that. In his earlier work especially, he had a really great sense of humor, kind of a wacky, dark sense of humor to his work. But he isn't the greatest or most coherent or most disciplined storyteller. And that's where I think the producer would need to come in. You need to have someone who can get him the right script, who can have enough power over the production to sort of keep him on task, to keep him from veering off and going down the little alleys that he likes to go down. It seems like Tim Burton has a tendency to become very, very interested in certain characters or certain themes or certain elements of the film to the extent that he forgets what the movie is actually supposed to be about. But at the same time, he doesn't just change the movie and make it about the thing that obviously interests him. It's really weird. It's like how I'll give you an example. Batman Returns, right? It's obvious. It's so obvious that the only character that interests Tim Burton in Batman Returns is the Penguin. That's the whole reason that Tim Burton is there. That's the character he cares about. That's the character he pours the most into. But the movie isn't about the Penguin. The movie is about Batman. But the problem is Tim Burton pays so much attention to the Penguin that it doesn't feel like it's about Batman either. So the movie winds up not really being about anybody. I mean, you have the Batman who should be and sort of formally is the protagonist. You have Catwoman, who could also be the protagonist of the film based on her character arc and the amount of screen time she gets. And then you have the Penguin, who the director is clearly the most interested in. And you have it gets so mixed up that the movie winds up being formless and shapeless and not really about anything. So Burton is a very, very talented visual director, but not a very strong, steady hand at the wheel in terms of storytelling. Bush Basher 85. On the Colbert Report, Stephen Colbert often had great, intelligent guests on his show. On The Late Show with David Letterman, Letterman's often had celebrities plug their new movie or TV show, and the discussions are not that deep or intelligent. My question is, do you think it's possible for Colbert to bring any of the sort of intelligence his show had to a show that is so mainstream? It's possible, but given the realities of commercial television, I don't think it's very likely. Colbert, I think, the good news, bad news of Stephen Colbert hosting The Late Show is, the good news is an incredibly funny, witty, talented man is going to be taking over as the host of The Late Show after David Letterman leaves. The bad news is he's not going to be doing the Colbert Report anymore. And if you're like me and you're a fan of Colbert and you're a fan of what he's done on the Colbert Report the last however long it's been, 7 or 8 years, it's bittersweet. I mean, I feel happy for him for getting the job and for sort of moving up, and I feel like he deserves that. But at the same time, I feel like this selfish regret, because the Colbert Report is one of those shows that is just, it's unlike anything else on TV. Things happen on that show that would not happen on any other show. And yes, you're right, and I'm just talking in terms of comedy, but yeah, in terms of the satire, in terms of the level of discussion with the guests, the types of guests that he has on, not just movie stars, but authors and professors and activists, and yeah, it would be nice to think that some of that would carry over to the Late Show, but I wouldn't expect it. I would think that Colbert's show will be good. I think his version of the Late Show will be fun to watch and will be a great show. And I do think people like Conan O'Brien and more recently Jimmy Fallon have shown that there is life in that form. That late night television, the late night talk show format, need not be a dead format. You can inject some creativity and some imagination into it and make it into a very fun, enjoyable show. And I think Colbert's show will be an example of that, but not in the way that the Colbert Report has been. Masked Malfrey, dear Steve, what are some of your favorite movie, TV, or literary villains? Also, just to be random, what's your favorite alcoholic drink? Thanks. My favorite alcoholic drink is probably just a beer. I'm not very adventurous when it comes to drinking. I'm not much of like a whiskey drinker or like a mixed drink kind of guy. I just like a beer. And my brand for the last year or two has been Yingling. Before that, I liked Stella Artois. I still would have a Stella every now and then. But yeah, just a beer. I'm a beer guy. As for favorite movie, TV, or literary villains, I mean, as a Batman guy, I have to say the Joker. The Joker's a big one. Two-Face is a great Batman villain. In terms of movies, I think one of the best villains of any movie ever that I've ever seen is Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. I think he is just an awesome villain, just an awesome, awesome villain. What else? Who's another good villain? Well, as a Star Trek Deep Space Nine fan, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Gul Dukat as well. Gul Dukat. He kind of jumped the shark in the last couple years. But in the early run of the show, when he was just like Sisko's counterpart in the Cardassians and more like his nemesis, and before they went all crazy with like the religious stuff and him changing his appearance to look Bajaran and sleeping with the Kai, and I mean all that stuff completely loses me. I that's just goofy and silly, but for the most part, up until that point, up until it really got goofy and stupid, I think Gul Dukat was a great villain. Jade Mask 14. Hi, I'm a history buff. It's hard for me to watch a movie, TV show, and video game without wondering what happened before to lead to the story of the main plot of the movie, TV show, or game. That's why I like the Elder Scrolls game, because they fill in each game with history about not just where you are, but a little of the world around you. Do you think that some movies and TV shows will be better with little more history or less? A lot of this just comes down to my philosophy as a writer, but I think you should always go for less, the least amount of backstory possible. My writing teacher in college, my screenwriting teacher, told me to always enter your story at the latest point possible. Basically, don't show us anything more than you have to show us to tell us the story. That doesn't. So that means that there are different screenwriting terms. There's what's called the inciting incident, and that's the event or the thing, whatever it is, that happens at the beginning of the movie to kick the plot forward. But there's also something that's known as a key incident, and the key incident can be something in the character's backstory that we don't even actually see in the movie. I mean, you can see it in the movie. It can be shown if you decide to, but it doesn't have to be. It's just something that happened in the past that the character knows about, that drives the character or drives the plot forward in some way. The echoes, the ripples from the key incident sort of flood into the story that you're telling. But you don't have to show the key incident. And if you don't absolutely have to, I would say don't show the key incident. My philosophy is the movie is the movie. You start the movie when you have to tell your story. You end the movie, and when the movie's over, the movie's over. And you don't show what happened before, and you don't tell people what happened after. I hate titles at the end of the movie like that, like epilogue titles that tell you, 20 years later, blah, 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 or what happened to the characters afterwards. If it's that important, put it in the movie. Once you fade to black and the credits roll, that should be the end. So I think I have to disagree with you there. I think that as little backstory as possible is the way to go. Warp Rules. Hello, Steve. Can you tell us a joke? Okay, here's one I like. A guy is sitting at a bar and he's pretty drunk, and then a dog walks into the bar and takes a seat at the stool right next to the guy and orders a drink. Well, this guy, slams his glass down and he looks at the bartender and he says, "I'll be goddamned if I'm going to drink at the same bar as a fucking dog." And he throws the stool out from behind him and he puts his dukes up, and him and the dog get into this fight. They start wrestling around on the ground. And during the fight, the guy reaches into his jacket and pulls out a gun and he shoots the dog. And he hits the dog in the foot, and the dog yelps and goes running out of the bar. Things settle down. A few days go by. Same bar. The same guy is sitting there, getting drunk as usual. The doors of the bar fling open, and in walks that dog from a couple of days ago. And he's got a hat on and a bandana around his neck and a little bandage on the foot that was shot. And he comes walking in and he looks around, and the bartender says, "What's your business here, dog?" And the dog looks at the bartender out of the corner of his eye and he says, "I'm looking for the man who shot my paw." You asked for that. Pokemaster 4555. Hey Steve, I'd really like your advice. My mother's husband has brought up a concept called the golden ratio, that there must be an intelligent designer because everything is apparently within an equation. 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 plus 1 equals 3, 2 plus 3 equals 5, etc. There's even a video called God in Mathematics that seemed to make so much sense. Also, he brought up Nephilim angels, which I didn't even know about, that are basically giants that died before the flood, and apparently their skeletons are being found all over. I tried Googling them, but couldn't really find a source that didn't have Christian bias. Can you tell me your thoughts on both these concepts? And if they're ridiculous, how can I get other people to see that? I will cut to the chase and tell you that they're both ridiculous. Especially that Nephilim angel skeleton that are supposedly being found all over the world. That's complete horseshit. That's some demented fantasy that someone has told you. There's not an ounce of truth to that at all. You will not find a single credible institution of paleontology that tells you that there have been Nephilim skeletons discovered in anywhere in the world. It's just made up. It's just some demented fantasy from some desperate fundamentalist who is telling you that. There's no truth to that at all. Now, the golden ratio thing is a little more interesting because there are many instances of the golden ratio appearing in nature or in natural patterns. But my understanding is, first of all, that the people who use the golden ratio as a sort of design argument are greatly exaggerating the frequency of these occurrences. For instance, a lot of times the example used is the Nautilus shell. And this is not just used by people making a God argument. It's often used in math classes to demonstrate how the golden ratio works, my understanding is that, you're told in school that the spiral of the Nautilus proceeds according to the golden ratio, and that's actually not the case. I mean, there are probably some Nautilus shells that it works that way, but all Nautilus shells are not exactly identical, and they don't all automatically have a spiral that matches the golden ratio. So that's a little bit of an exaggeration. And the other times when we find the golden ratio evident, or we can describe patterns that we see in nature according to the golden ratio, is probably because the golden ratio is what's known as an emergent property. It's something that, for whatever reason, is very easy to get. It's very easy for things to happen in that order, in that procession. So, and if it is, in fact, an emergent property, that means that it's something that just happens on its own. So it doesn't need an intelligent designer. It doesn't need an agent to make it happen or to design it. It just happens on its own. So that's actually an argument against intelligent design. But yeah, as for how you would dissuade people from this, I mean, if someone is willing to accept something like, say, the existence of God on the basis of completely made up evidence like Nephilim skeletons or exaggerated misinterpreted evidence like supposedly the presence of the golden ratio. I mean, I'm not sure what else you can do. You can explain to them, like I just did to you, about the golden ratio. You can maybe do some research yourself and find some better examples or some better explanations or illustrations. But honestly, once someone has decided that they would rather cling to their pre-existing belief and just cherry pick evidence that they think supports it rather than look at what the evidence actually says and accept that conclusion courageously no matter what it is, whether it proves them wrong or not. I mean, it's limited as to what you can do. You know, you can't force people to believe something that they just refuse to believe. You can be as persuasive as you want. You can be as diligent and determined in trying to persuade them, but there's no guarantee at all that they're going to be persuaded. There's no guarantee that lightning's going to strike at all. That not only means that my rambling answer to your excellent question is over, it also means that it is now time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
John Schrader. Hey Steve, how often do you shave? Every day. No, I'm just kidding. Almost never. I trim a lot, but almost never do I actually shave. Arte 1090. I know you said you don't like Lord of the Rings, but you also don't like fantasy? As someone who is into all that orc and wizard nonsense, I must ask, why? Can you explain a bit further? It's just not my thing. I don't know if I can explain a bit further. It's just a matter of taste. It just bores me. When I other than Harry Potter, which I think I like because it has some humor and some sort of childlike wonder to it, when I get into the orcs and the wizards and the magic spells and the dragons and castles and all that shit, my eyes just glaze over. I'm just bored to tears by all of it. The whole wizard high fantasy aesthetic just fucking puts me to sleep. Louis Ang 114, lightning round question. Describe the following, each with one word. Chocolate chip cookie, delicious. String theory, confusing. America, promising. The universe, amazing. Your cat, adorable. Your wife, beautiful. And yourself, Can we count as my one word? I'm going to say that we can. Captain Andy, who would win in a fight, Rocky or Rambo? Oh, dude, Rambo. Rambo would kill Rocky. Rocky's a good boxer and all, but come on. No. Rambo would murder Rocky. Cranium on empty. What do you think about overpopulation? I think it's bad. I think we should do something about it. Methos, Mr. Shives, if you were forced to pick, who from the Bible Reloaded has the sexier voice, Hugo or Jake? I can't tell them apart. Putneska 621, have you seen Once More with Feeling? That would be the musical episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yes, of course, yes, I've seen it. I would describe it in much the same way I would describe other musicals that I can sort of formally admire but say I don't really like. I don't think the songs are very good, and I think it does have some funny bits in it. It does have some really nice jokes that sort of subvert the musical format, but there aren't enough of them and they aren't funny enough to make it worth sitting through an hour of a fucking musical. It's just I know a lot of people say that's their favorite Buffy episode. It's just not mine. The chemistry question, lightning round, biology, chemistry, or physics? I will say biology because it's the easiest to understand without a high level of mathematical skill, although physics is a good one too because really everything kind of reduces ultimately to physics if you get down to the fundamental level. But yeah, I'm stuck with biology of those three, absolutely. Michael Pekalski, Steve, I have to ask, of the apologists you've responded to on your channel, which one was the most aggravating and which the least? Oh, most aggravating was Josh McDowell, who wrote Whose Evidence That Demands a Verdict I reviewed. That was just fucking awful. And the least aggravating was C.S. Lewis. His arguments were bullshit, but he was at least a more than competent writer. So he was at least easy to read and kind of nice to read, even though his arguments were complete horseshit. Alan Key 86. Hi, Steve. You keep an impressively tight YouTube schedule. Have you ever fallen crazily behind on your writing, filming, editing process and had to pull an all-nighter? Cheers, Alan. Yes, actually, if I don't get out ahead of the An Atheist Reads videos far enough, like if I don't get those shot and cut early enough in the day, I can fall behind on that. And the Steve and Stuffy videos also, because they require so many different camera setups, and they do take a while to edit as well. So I need to make sure that I'm really on my game and really on schedule with those, or I can fall way behind. And I don't think I've ever quite pulled a true all-nighter, but I've had a few nights that wound up being much, much later than I wanted them to be because I wanted to get shit done for the next day. So, yeah. Hey, that's it. Before I get out of here, let me do a shout out as always. The shout out this week goes to an awesome channel called FlackerMan. FlackerMan is yet another channel devoted to critiquing, exposing, explaining, making fun of, whatever, the uniquely American religion of Mormonism. There's a series, the main series on FlackerMan's channel is called Examining Mormonism. It looks at different Mormon doctrines, Mormon culture, the history of the Mormon church. He has several of those. Really interesting stuff. A lot of it is about sort of the culture of the Mormon church, how they treat apostates, things like that. You know, a lot of times atheists on YouTube are criticized for spending so much time taking the piss out of Christianity that we ignore other religions like Islam and things like that. And Mormonism is one of those other religions. And I know Mormons, for the most part, consider themselves to be Christian and to be part of the Christian church, but most non-Mormon forms of Christianity don't think that. You know, they don't think that Mormons are Christians. And Mormonism is something that, like I say, it's an American religion. It's a relatively recent religion. It's a great religion to use as an example if you want to turn a Christian apologist's arguments around and show how they can be used to argue in favor of a religion that the Christian rejects and therefore aren't very good arguments for his religion either. So there's just all kinds of reasons to learn and to study and to examine Mormonism. And FlackerMan is a great channel for doing that. So if you haven't subscribed to FlackerMan's channel and you want to hear some interesting critiques of Mormonism, check out FlackerMan's channel. It's highly, highly recommended for me. So, that's it for me. I will be back again to do this again next week, and I believe my lovely wife will be joining me next week. Is that true, sweetheart?
Yes, sir.
Did you hear that? My lovely wife. She's in the other room right now, but she has graciously agreed to join me yet again. Ooh, here she is. Come in. Oh, come in. My lovely wife Ashley will be joining me once again for another special appearance on You Had to Ask. So, as usual, when Ashley joins me for next week, leave a comment on this video with your question for next time, and you can ask me, or you can ask her, or you can ask both of us anything about anything, and we will answer as many of them as we as we possibly can. So that'll be next week. It'll be fun, won't it? My lovely wife joining me once again next week. So put in your question as a comment to this video for next week. And until then, I'll see you. So take care, everybody.